since we were talking about marginality in the beginning,
And we're cutting that out.
we're cutting that out.
Yes. We're cutting that out
Anyway,
because
answer
you
the
make more
question.
sense than me.
Anyway, answer this.
Each of the Indian languages now has a corpus of Dalit texts, which they themselves would like to call Dalit literature. And I remember this debate between Om Prakash Valmiki and Namvar Singh, where Namvar Singh is saying that there is no need to categorize this corpus of writing as Dalit literature per se. They are written in Hindi or Marathi or anything. To which Om Prakash Valmiki is saying that your categories to understand literature is completely different from ours. So we'll keep calling it that literature, nevertheless, doesn't matter what you say. But when it comes to institutionalization of the study of literature, should we include this, for example, should we have a course called Dalit literature differently, or should we have a more integrative kind of model where we can include these texts without, well, the identitarian baggage that comes around it?
I mean, like Gandhi said about Western civilization, it would be a good idea. But yeah, the reason, I mean, this is, again, this is something which doesn't really come to the surface of discussion at all, but I think that it is one of the most important things that, along with the standardization of language and, how standard language itself is an institution, and literature breaks it all the time. All the time. It's only literary study that forces this standardization onto. So clearly that is, inadequate, that kind of standardization and the categorization that goes with it and whatever emerges from it is clearly inadequate to understand at least literature written in that language, whatever else it may be adequate for. But a similar thing is with respect to formation of categories of study. These formations or these categories, they started by coming in from American academia. I mean, postmodern, postcolonial, exclusion, inclusion, South Asian studies, marginality and orality and all of these. Now, some of these categories by name are things that we can identify in our culture and in our literature. It would be identifiable in any human society. There will be marginality in any human society. And there has been orality and still is perhaps in many human societies too. I mean, it would be nice to imagine that suppose we don't have these areas of specialization. What happens? How does literary study, how does academia, how does understanding suffer? I am not able to give a very blank answer saying that we will be impoverished if these categories are discarded. Because we are only discarding the categories, I don't think we are discarding the literature at all. And the literature demands on its own terms certain things. And those demands are to be met by literary study. Where, Valmiki does have an entire book called Dalit Aesthetics, right? What is it called?
Dalit Vimarsh.
Vimarsh. Vimarsh is subject.
Sahitya Vimarsh
or something else. Hey, Dalit Sahitya Vimarsh
Dalit
means
aesthetics is somebody
else. Who is the
It's not by
somebody
him.
else?
But there is a collection of essays by Valmiki on aesthetics. I've forgotten the name.
Yeah, that there.
But Dalit aesthetics we have, the name I forgot.
No, my understanding of the matter is simply this, that, I mean, what we think of as literature and the category that Namvar Singh is using and the category that Valmiki is using are probably not known to each other. I mean, they do not talk about what is literature before saying that let us discard this or let us keep this. Ultimately, I think they are saying the same thing, because what has been written thus far which is being written by people who have not undergone the experience, let us say, that a Dalit person undergoes, untouchability for instance, will of necessity be completely different from the experience of somebody who cannot be touched. Now, it has taken all this while for the Indian state perhaps to enable those people who have once not been touched to write. Obviously, you will have to expect some other kind of literature. It can't possibly be what you are used to. But if it is literature, then the basic criteria that Namvar Singh is talking about and the criteria that Valmiki is talking about should match. If, for example, if you say that literature written by non-Dalits has a specific language, most certainly literature written by non-men also has a specific language. Literature written by non-women has a specific. I mean, it's
a given.
It's yes, the way the world comes to you and the way you want it to go to someone else from you. It can't possibly be the same, but it's the same language. That is true. So that is within the language itself, and I think it's actually an enchanting idea to think that suppose we do away with these categories. First and foremost, Akta pe patthar phoda. So that is going to make you focus on literature. In the, I would say in the raw sense, I almost said the pure sense, but there is no pure sense.
নিখিল?
থাম এবার অনেক
না না আর তিনটে প্রশ্ন আছে আমি
Ask him.
তারপর ঘন্টা চলছে তো।
How important do you think is the role of Indian literature in the pedagogical setup of comparative literature?
I mean, what do you mean?
Because some people would be saying that it is a reductionist idea if one wants to do comparative Indian literature. So one should include literatures of the entire world, by which of course one means the literatures of Europe and Latin America or America.
Comparative literature in India begins, which you might say that in that case you are saying that it has not begun yet because we haven't started to do it, and I would agree, because a lot of, I mean, one of the things which we hope that we will be able to do in the next few years is have some departments in which the language requirement is not only compulsory but is offered, such that at either undergraduate level or at postgraduate level, more than one language is on the syllabus. It can be taught, whether as a supplementary, that is a subsidiary or an extra departmental course, or whether as part of the main course. And as part of the main course, there already are syllabi which include at least 4 core papers on language and literature, different Indian languages, apart from other core courses. And in many places, I shouldn't say many places, but at least in 2 places that I know, comparative literature is being, I mean, it's not English and comparative literature, rather it is Hindi and comparative literature. So these are only 2 places I know. So, I mean, comparative literature happens to be a tool of literary study. Now, if you are able to use the tool, then it really does not matter who you are bringing next to whom. If you are able to explain what is the logic of bringing A next to B, that is all that is required. And if you say that, I mean, you know, comparative literature in India, if it teaches Indian literature that is reductionist, then that is a very short-sighted statement. I think it militates against the very spirit of comparative literature. Because actually, studying Indian literature is supposed to teach you how to do comparative literature. That's the best way you can learn. I mean, if you want to let go something which you already have, and go looking for other things elsewhere, I mean, of course you're welcome. But I mean, you need to know the alphabet before you start writing a sentence. And you learn the alphabet at home. At least if it's your own language.
For the last 20 years, exactly the time when you have taught comparative literature, people in different parts of the world have asked for a metamorphosis of the discipline. Some people have said that it should be transformed into, comparative literature should transform itself into translation studies. Some people have said that comparative literature should become comparative cultural studies. So, and you have responded to some of these moves.
All
at
bloody
least.
of every single bloody one.
So, if you said something more about this on record.
It's all on record. It's in the public space. It's published for heaven's sake. No, I mean, people are welcome. Like I said, if they think that Indian comparative literature reduces comparative literature, it is, well, I mean, I repeat that I think it's a short-sighted statement because it's only because we haven't tried to understand what comparative literature can do for our understanding of Indian literature that we can say this. But on the other hand, for all these other disciplines, translation studies, etc., and it is only apparent to people that I have worked in gender studies and I have worked in cultural studies and I have worked in translation. From my own perspective, all of these have been comparative method applications. So if somebody wants to, get rid of the method and deal with the theme of things, if that is what a discipline is, that we will teach black women's writing because they are black women, and then we start a particular department which says black women studies. Fine. I mean, it is not very clear to me which is more reductionist. For any of these, comparative literature as it is now can provide a method. You can take it or leave it. As far as Indian literature is concerned, and rather, let's not say that, as far as the practice of comparative literature in India is concerned, I would like to say that its first duty is towards Indian literature, or its first object of study is Indian literature. But then if nobody is willing to hear, that's fine. It remains the first object of study. If people are not willing to accept, it doesn't change the fact, does it?
Last question from you. And I do not know how to frame it, but you have written about the migrant women's experience of the city.
It should never be published.
Some of it has been published at least. Yeah. So that would generally be categorized under the rubric of gender studies. But while reading that, I have what I thought was that it was also crucial to your engagement with comparative literature as a way of life, perhaps as a way of taking cognizance of these experiences and then expressing them. So, although the book doesn't really talk about comparative literature much, would you like to link these two things in some way? I think the connections are there already in your mind. So.
No, the connections are, they're not in the book.
I didn't find
It's
it.
very sad if not.
পরিষ্কার
করে নয়, but the point is
থাকার
like
কথাও
that
ছিল না হয়তো।
no, true, but the entire methodology over there is the narrative is the raw material. The narratives of all these women, what, 300 odd women, 350 women, from an age range of 18 to I think 60, yeah. So, and from different parts of the country, mostly in the eastern region. So that entire diversity, that is the northeastern states, Orissa, Bihar, Jharkhand, West Bengal. So different kinds of, I mean, simply the different kinds of locations, different languages, different narratives. So who is going to help you? Apart from, from a method that is ready-made, nobody, it's impossible. I mean, you don't need to make any, you don't need to make an effort to make a link. It's a natural thing. And of course, philosophically, and sometimes, I mean, when you said your way of life and things like that, I have also said that in many places. It sounds very pompous. But then, I mean, the whole point about comparative literature is that it has a very ethical position it has an ethical position, full stop, that is the discipline. What it teaches you actually is, I won't say that it is hospitality towards the other. It's not as if you are asking the other to come and sit in your house or some such thing. The actual impulse is that you go. The idea of learning a language is that you go out of your own boundary, go out of your own self. So you have to have the mentality to do that. You have to realize that first, that you require to go out. And I mean, you can say that the discipline demands that you go out. And if the discipline didn't do anything else, that would be enough for its existence. That it puts that thought into your mind that the boundary of myself is not the boundary of the world.
Can you give us a filmy line that describes the existence of comparative literature?
No, I'm thinking immediately, but I might think about it. Do you have one?
No, I was just going to
It's not a bad idea. No, I can all